Do you think Draymond should have been suspended though?
I think his reputation preceded him. And then I think, because every action is a reaction, there's no kick or stomp if Sabonis doesn't grab his ankle, right? And so for every action is a reaction, but also the reputation, but maybe what happened afterwards, I believe, played just as big a part, especially with Commissioner Silver right there, right? Like, it's almost like, okay, I'm mad, whatever, so be it. It is what it is. And I think that part, the reputation before what happened and the what happened after, there was a break in
the interaction with the crowd.
Actions. I think that played just as big a part as the actual stump.
Okay.
If it's just a stump, no, you have been suspended.
So point of conversation for sure is the interaction with the fans, riling people up, talking shit, all that, whatever. There are rules around when this was happening. This was happening when they were reviewing. So it wasn't like after he got ejected. He left. He talked to Zach. He bounced after he got ejected. But when that happens sometimes after an ejection, when you make stuff with the fans, like there's rules around leaving the court. That's always just a fine. You would never get suspended for that. Right. The fact that I was a little surprised that no one tried to like, hey, Draymond, chill out, bro. Whether it was for the Warriors or whether it was a referee or something. I guess the referees were busy, but still, that was kind of interesting to me. But I don't think he should have been suspended. I'll stand by that.
I didn't think for just the action itself, no, I don't think that was suspension worthy, especially when it was a reaction, right? But I think they stood back because they know Draymond as well, right? And being a genius in anything, you're a little out of touch with the world. So Draymond, they want him. We had a game a couple weeks back. I think it was against New Orleans. They were down almost 20, and he started getting to it with their players. And it lit a fire underneath the Warriors. They came back and won that game. They don't win that game if he doesn't do that. So I think they know it's a fine line. And Draymond, man, you know how it is, Jay, in the playoffs. You put yourself in I saw with you even in the mornings when you come in, you were so dialed in. I think Draymond is so locked in right now with this opportunity and being in the playoffs. He's in war mode, right? He's not thinking. His instincts just took over in all assets. Bring on more. I'm bring it on. Like he's in that mode right now. And they just backed up. And you're right. That part right there, I was a little surprised, but I was like, okay, they know a little bit more about it than I do, especially in that setting.
Aren't you guys also a little surprised, obviously, that this tips the scales for the series in such a significant way versus if this was a 1-1 series, it's probably a little bit different suspending him. I mean, this was a bad defensive team with Draymond playing. Without him, I mean, who knows how they're going to look in Game 3. It feels like the league is. It feels. I mean, there's a lot of reporting that the Warriors are really upset about this, and you can understand why. It just feels like it tipped the scales a little bit in a way that is going to affect the outcome of the series in a way that you would hope that a suspension wouldn't normally do.
And Tommy, it could affect not only the outcome of the series, it could affect the outcome of the future. Like, who knows what happens with Draymond from here, or Clay re-signing, or like them losing in the first round, the Warriors, the mighty Warriors, that can change how, upper management, ownership, whatever, views how this team is looked the next 2-3 years. So it can have a boatload of ramifications if it doesn't work out in their favor and they end up losing. Because, like we said, 2-1, being down 2-1 is a completely different beast from being down 3-0.
Joe Dumars was asked about that, and he said, unfortunate for the Warriors, but we have to look at the specific actions of this game and what the suspension or what the punishment be for this specific action, regardless of where the series is at. And look, I think it's unfortunate for the Warriors. I have been so entertained by both these games. I think Game 3 still is going to be awesome. Very curious to see how Steve Kerr plays. Our buddy Nate Jones, Jamal is also a friend of Nate's. He pointed something out, and I thought it was great, that the Warriors, unlike nearly every good team in the NBA now, I think you could probably put Cleveland in this same regard. They play 2 non-shooters. Yes. And that's very difficult. And you get away with it because Looney's so good at what he does. Draymond is so good at what he does. And then you have the 2 best shooters of all time. Right. So you can get away with it at times. I think in some ways, and Jamal, if I'm wrong here, please point it out. In some ways, the margin has shrunk for the Warriors because the rest of the league has prioritized shooting so much that now almost every team plays 4, sometimes 5 shooters, like the Celtics will do sometimes when Robert Williams is on the bench. But every team pretty much plays 4 shooters at least on the floor at a time. And so that margin that you get from Clay and Steph's volume, that has dissipated a little bit. And the league has sort of caught up to the Warriors. So when you talk about long term, if they do lose this series, you probably look at I'm not saying they get rid of Looney, and I'm not saying they get rid of Draymond. I'm saying they figure out a way to get a front court player that can stretch the floor.
Yeah, I think you're spot on in every aspect. I think before they were so far ahead of the curve because they were shooting the volume of threes. You had the 2 best shooters ever. And you had non-shooters in the past with Iguodala and Sean Livingston. They kind of operated in the mid-range and in. But their smarts, along with that, offset, some of the shooting deficiencies and their versatility. And like you said, the rest of the league wasn't there yet. Now the rest of the league has said, oh, Warriors, that's what you're doing? Oh, we're going to steal a page out of your book, but we're younger. We're adding even more shooting. Oh, and by the way, we're going to play 4 shooters. We're going to take and raise you one. We're going to play 4 shooters with 1 non-shooter. And so that's where we're not saying their run is over, but
yeah,
that's where the field has gotten closer to what they're doing.
And it's not just, I'm doing this. I know the Warriors and the Celtics shot the 2 most threes this year. I have no idea going back to 2015 when this run started, what the numbers are and what the differences are between, let's say, the Warriors and the 10th most, the team with the 10th most attempts. My point is, the more shooting you add, the more it opens everything up, right? There's a compounding effect to more shooting. So it's not just about that. It's about, I've got a guy who can attack the basket. Let's add shooting around him so he can get to the hoop. I got a guy who can draw fouls when he's in one-on-one coverage. Let's add more shooting so he can draw more fouls. That's the point of shooting, is space. And the Warriors created space by having the 2 best shooters ever. They've got one of the smartest players ever in Draymond Green, manipulating defenses, figuring out how to play out of those post splits. And so other teams said, okay, we need more shooting.
Right.
And the days of shit, man, with the Clippers, like Blake wasn't a 3. He was a mid-range shooter. And so now you have to beat the Warriors, to beat any team, you have to have shooting. To be an elite team, you have to have shooting.
Period. And then you look at a team like the Kings, right? They're rare to me because for as young as they are, they play the right way. Like the ball hops, they're moving the ball around. And then you have a clutch guy in De'Aaron Fox, but then and Sabonis is, playing his butt off. But then you also have something small but something big. You have Mike Brown, right, who was with the Warriors. So he's giving insight to them. No, send him that way. I know this about him. Or attack him like this. Those little things, when you have that and you have that infrastructure, you can be good now. You can be good for a long time. But you can also start to, slay the dragon, so to speak. Oh, the dragon's not as big. I thought his teeth were sharper than that. Oh, okay. So it gives you that kind of confidence going into it, especially when you have that insight from a coach like that.
And I think that's been a real underrated part, and something I'm glad you mentioned. Mike Brown, who will win Coach of the Year, already won the National Association of Basketball Coaches Coach of the Year. He has something that you and I don't have, and Tommy doesn't have, and no one on TV has. He has intel from being in years and years of coaches meetings with Steve Kerr and that staff. He knows everything there is to know about every guy on that Warriors roster. And to some degree, I think this is probably part of the game plan with Draymond, is just like, hey, dude, like, he's important to the team. Let's bait it a little bit.